Right. Okay. So once again, thank you all for coming, and we're going to recite the short refuge prayer and the four immeasurables to set our motivation tonight so that we can have more time for discussion. So I think the discussions we've been having have been very good, very lively. People have been having good feedback. So so if we go to page 5 in our prayer book and we all recite out loud, although keep your microphones muted so we don't create a lot of feedback. So we recite, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent. I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, shangju bardu dagni kapsuchi. Dagi jinso ki pe sonam gi, drola penshir sange jupa sho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesem centam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dembar jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gigu dang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi drawar jorchi. Ne ring chak dong ni dong drawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. We've been doing introductions each night. Alex, have you given a little bit of your biography?
Not yet, but yeah.
Would you
Welcome.
be prepared? Would you be able to do it now?
Sure. If you think
Yeah,
it's good.
a short introduction to your Buddhist path. You know where it is. You know how you started and how it's helped you, and whatever else you're thinking about that it may help you with in the future. So please, this is Alex Swarnov. Please go right ahead. Smirnov,
Yes, well,
excuse me.
thank you, Lance. I'll try to be short, although I wouldn't say my path is very long. It started actually even in I think my middle school. I remember finding book on yoga and studying it, and then finding there is not only hatha yoga out there, but other kinds of raja yoga, karma yoga, and all that. And then actually at that time in Russia, yoga was a little bit strange subject. It was still before perestroika and everything. So actually there were some yoga clubs, but like only under some supervision, it was allowed. If a teacher, like my teacher, found me with a book on yoga, she took it away from me. But eventually I retrieved it when I was leaving school. That was grade 8. So my yoga training kind of was paused somewhat, but like until I graduated from um, Russian middle school, and then I started like more serious, interested in kind of Eastern philosophy and spirituality and all that. But then there was at some point there is a teacher appeared in Russia, and he started. I don't want to mention his name, but interesting enough, his lineage was associated, at least according to him, with Kagyu lineage. So and he got quite popular in Moscow, at least, and even was on some radio station and like local TV channel. And I listened to all that, and there were some centers. I attended those centers. I learned about chakras and meditation, and there was a lot of that was kind of similar to our preliminary practices, that what we're doing here. Yes, he said that he was visited, Tibet, and they were translating scriptures. That was teacher from Japan, by the way. Yeah. So, but that kind of laid foundation for me for Buddhism. What is the process? What is the path? Then I get, but my goal was to learn science. So I went into college and ended up in the United States here. After, I think, then again, my studies were put on hold in graduate school, going through a lot of postdoctoral training and all that. But I kept my eyes open, and at some point I came across teachers, local teachers, maybe through my Chinese friends. Oh, by the way, there were a couple of times I was fortunate enough to attend lectures or public appearance by His Holiness. Once it was at the National Mall, so I even have a T-shirt for that. That was Smithsonian Folklife Festival. That was a big event for me, because that time I finally really get this direct, spontaneous teaching by His Holiness. Then I was fortunate also, was quite impressed with some breathing meditation by Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh, I think his name. Yes, and at some point, through local Buddhist community, I started attending various empowerments, various initiations, Medicine Buddha, others, Vajrasattva.
Was all this in the Washington area? Were you at Tibet Meditation Center, TMC?
Oh, but no, I didn't learn until Tibetan Meditation Center quite I think I heard about it, but I never get the chance to attend. At some point, I did went and visited it, and there was even like a couple of workshops that I attended there. Yes. Then I also was also fortunate to meet some of the interesting Vajrayana traditions, teachers and practitioners that also helped open up my mind. What is mantra? What is mudra? How all of this comes together in practice, and that helped me inspire further. And then when our lineage teacher here um, start visiting, well, I try to attend those and cause his transmissions, his life stories inspired quite a bit.
Well, I'm curious about, your background coming from Russia, and the spirituality is, we know that spirituality was kind of, frowned upon, to say it mildly, but you had a yearning for spirituality. You had that within yourself. Did somebody inspire you for that, or was that something that you just kind of, realized within yourself?
um, it well, in our family, it's never been discouraged. Like actually, I'm like baptized, officially baptized Orthodox Christian in childhood, but I actually clearly remember some of that, how that happened, and that was when I was maybe like 6 years old or something like that. Some of that I remember well. So maybe that was a seed, in a way. But because my mother comes from like a rural Russian village, um, well, my father is a surgeon, so he is not very spiritual. But my grandfather, which my father like really admires, and like our whole family admires, he was an artist, and actually he started his art career as a pupil of icon painters in Russia. So they were painting Orthodox icons, and he learning that art. And later he became, quite a renowned artist in Russia, and visited some mountains in, close to not Himalayan, but the south of Russia, like borderline with China. So I don't know. He remained very Christian, in his, and even my Jewish grandmother often mentioned that he baptized her into Russian Russian Christianity. Um,
A couple of minutes left for this section, so can you tell us, how your Buddhism, how that has, how you've grown into that, in as adding it to your lifestyle? It's become part of your
yes.
lifestyle.
So the thing is that I mean, at some point as a teenage and growing up, I was trying to read, you know, any kind of philosophy and Bible and or Old Testament, New Testament, and I still had a lot of questions. And I was reading also Nicholas Roerich, his channeling of Mahatmas and all that. There was a lot of at some point like really revival of spirituality in Russia, because there was no longer suppression through communists and all that. So there was a lot of information and a lot of possibility to learn. Now, unfortunately, uh, I couldn't find my many answers. Bible is just that, and nobody was teaching, what is the meaning of this. There is a lot of very cryptic stuff in the Bible, if you think about it. So, and when you would come to a priest, for example, and you would ask some question, they would say like, "Oh, you," I mean, they would make a reference to like Satan or devil, like trying to, put doubts in you or something like that. So I was a little bit put off by that. So, but then when I started looking at Buddhist philosophy, I found, well, it's very rational. It actually tries to explain something. It's not just blind faith, and then intuitively you have to get to something. So that attracted me, and there were certain practices that like help you learn about yourself, about your mind, about your breath, about your energy. So I was also doing martial arts and interested in Oriental martial art, and that also started blending for me together and making more sense. Learning about Shaolin Monastery, for example, and why would they do their practices and how would they practice and meditate and all the stories of Bodhidharma. Uh, that
So can you kind of wind up and be able to say, how this has helped you personally, how your Buddhist teachings and practices have helped you personally?
Yeah, so actually learning more about and then so eventually I decided, okay, I will not just learn about it, I will start practicing it, and all and maybe not very systematically, but to the degree I can. So, and what I found interestingly, that a lot of things that happens during mass, during service in Russian Orthodox Church is actually very similar to you know Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism that we practice. There is chanting, there is compassion, there is like uh, uh, you know focusing of the mind, visualization, things like that, things like that.
So
Uh,
you're a scientist, and you probably you obviously were born with some karma, to move you in that direction, and the logic of the science, and you found that the Buddhism offered a systematic, logical approach to recognizing our
yeah, other
spirituality, or
spiritual traditions. Yeah, it helped me appreciate other spiritual traditions, including our own. I should say Greek because Russian Orthodoxy came from Greece, and from Greece it came, where. But then, so it helped me unite, different traditions together. And then later, like most recent years, I just professionally started to learn more about neurobiology, neuroscience, how brain works. And wow, I see now how everything is connected inside ours, and how vibration affects everything that's happening inside the brain. So it finally started making a lot of much more sense, so absorbing that wisdom and digesting it, and seeing how it affects me and others in practice, that keeps me going, keeps me inspired. And thank you, Lance, also for opening this another channel for dialogue, for questioning, for hearing others, and also learning original scriptures, following translation. But I think that's best what we can do.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and we all appreciate your being here and the way you approach this and the conversations that we've had and the the questions you have and everything are all very, very good. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you would like to
Yes, please.
aim towards Alex right now?
Спасибо большое for your story.
Пожалуйста.
Well, I don't know if you've been documenting it. I've been seriously thinking about a family history. But you're fascinating. Your family is fascinating. And you are, this is a huge transition period in Russia. And you've seen so many changes. And then, between, Soviet Union and then Russia and then the United States. It's a fascinating story. And I hope, at least for your daughter, you can keep some of that alive, especially since your grandfather was an icon painting. And that is amazing. And it's just amazing.
Thank you. We keep some family traditions and family stories that I'm still learning from my father. He's still alive and he's in Russia. But happy to share some points.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question for Alex? Okay, well, thank you all very much for that. And if there's anybody else who we haven't heard a biography from, maybe Faiza, maybe you'd like to speak next time, or maybe Rashani, maybe you'd like to speak. I know that you would have an interesting story as well. And Mark, perhaps you would like to speak as well. So thank you all. So we'll be asking, if people would like to, add their story, would be wonderful. So we're talking about the sutras, and we're talking about the play in full in particular. And we've been going through these different groups of the gateways to the light of the Dharma. So, just to refresh our memory, the Dharma is the literal teaching of the Buddha. It's the pathway that he was able to articulate for his enlightenment. So it included all the, if I can say, the difficulties, the experiences that he had in his life as a prince, as a human being, and so on, and bringing them to the pathway, to be able to use the pathway to be able to further purify those changes, those things that were happening, those emotions, those mental misconceptions and habitual tendencies that we all have as human beings and so on. And he was able to recognize them, categorize them, and be able to deal with them through his meditation practice and so on. So the meditation was like the crucible in which all this was all heated up, and was able to mix it all together and see that everything has been interconnected. So the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, is always indicated with a capital D. So the Dharma with a capital D is the Buddha Dharma, his Dharma. Dharma also has a lowercase d, which represents many different pathways. And there's many, many different pathways to do everything that we can think of, whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a carpenter, whether it's being a school teacher, all the different things, the pathways that we need to be able to have a structure in which to be able to accomplish in our ordinary lives and so on. So the lowercase d signifies those pathways. So this gateway to the Dharma, of course, is the gateway to the Buddha Dharma, to be able to look at, the human emotions, like I said, the mental misconceptions and the habitual tendencies, to be able to ascertain what it is that is kind of holding us back, pulling us down, keeping us from being able to open up our true nature, which is our Buddha nature. We use that term Buddha nature, but we could also use the term God. We could use the term Yahweh. We could use the term God. We could use the term Brahma. There's every tradition has a name for this true nature, and it's all valid. And the essence of what they all say is the same. And the Buddha always taught that it was worthwhile to see other paths and not take anything that he says for granted, anything that we talk about in the Dharma for granted, that it needs to be examined and tested to see how it affects our own selves and our own lives and so on. So these are important things to remember. So in the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the 4 practices. That was a group we talked about. I'm on 4.14, and 4.15 in our books here was the 4 knowings. We talked about that. And we talked about last week, we talked about 4.16, were the 4 thoughtfulnesses of effort. And we had a lot of conversation about that. And then the next group was 4.17, which are the 3 dispenses to be able to overcome harmful thoughts, the way that we deal with harmful thought. So those were topics that we talked about last time. If you'd like to go back, you can watch them on YouTube and refresh your memory about anything. So tonight we're on 4.18, which I'm going to read, and it's the 4 points all at one time and discuss it at one time, because 4.18 is the group that the title that I gave to it is the 4 overcomings of wrong views. So we have to understand what wrong view is and then be able to see how these 4 points here are helping us to overcome those wrong views. So when we talk about wrong views, and wrong views is one of the things that we talk about when we, in the 10 non-virtues, we talk about that the 10th non-virtue of the mind is the wrong view of the mind. So what is that? So there's 3 wrong views. It's not written here, so you might want to take some notes on this. So the wrong views are, first, that there is not a karma, cause and result. That someone who has the wrong view, that there is no reciprocity, that we can do anything and not be held accountable for it in any way, spiritually or politically or whatever, that that there's not a karmic law or a karmic foundation, an ethic that says if we do bad things, that bad things are going to happen to us. And for us to do something, whether it's bad or good, there needs to be a cause for that. So that cause propagates a action, which is the karma, and then the result of that action then is what we deal with and so on, and that leads to what might be another cause for another action and so on like that. So by recognizing karma, cause and result, we overcome the wrong view of ignorance of that, of not abiding by that. The second of the wrong views is not accepting truth as a cessation, the truth of cessation. In other words, what this means is when we study the 4 noble truths, and we talk about that there is all life has suffering in it, the cause of that suffering is our desire, and that there is a cessation that to overcome, to be able to cut through the cause, to stop the cause, the cessation of the cause that results in the suffering. And the way in which that is done is through the Eightfold Path. So the wrong view would be that you can do the Eightfold Path, you can perform the Eightfold Path, and it will not lead to the cessation. Now, of course, somebody can blindly be going through the Eightfold Path and not holding it, taking it to heart and not really using it to its utmost meaning and so on, and not fulfill that. But if they do, it will lead to the cessation of the cause of suffering. So that is the wrong view, that it will lead to the end of to the cessation of suffering, the cause of suffering, if you really apply yourself to the Eightfold Path. So the third of the wrong views is the wrong view of not accepting the three jewels. The three jewels in Buddhism is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So we talk about it, Om, Ah, Hong, the body, the speech, and the mind of the Buddha. So these three jewels are very important for us, and it's congruent with all the other traditions that I've studied. And I'm not a great scholar by any means, but I have studied many of the great traditions, and they all come down to a triad. They all come down to some kind of a trinity. They all come down to the number three. And those three together kind of binds things together, is what the whole philosophy of that particular tradition is kind of hung on and is used to be able to teach to other beings and so on. And coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, but actuality, the strongest structure in physical phenomenal nature is the triad, is the triangle, is the trusses you see, that bridges and so on that are made of, and big buildings and cranes and so on are assembled by lots of triangles, all brought together and so on, and it withstands all the different pressures that come from gravity and earthquakes and all those kinds of things. So this concept of the triad is something that's very, very important. And here in Buddhism, we're talking about it as the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha. The body is the physical body. The speech is the intellectualization of everything. And the heart center is the mind of the Buddha. So the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. And we have that all within us. We have that potential within us. And what we're learning to do is to recognize that bit by removing the things that are blocking our being able to understand that, to recognize that. We have these things that are these obstructions and so on. And bit by bit, we're removing those obstructions. And then what's revealed is that we have this true nature within ourselves. We have this body, speech, and mind of the Holy One. Whether we call it Buddha, whether we call it God, whether we call it Krishna or Brahma or whatever it is, that it's there. So this is to set up, this idea of overcoming these wrong views. So with 4.18, we're talking about the pursuit of the Dharma. We're talking about the next line where it says desiring the Dharma. We're talking about the next line where it says seeking to listen to the Dharma. And then the last one on the next page is the correct application of being able to use the overcoming of the wrong views as a gateway. So the pursuit of the Dharma is a gateway to the light of the Dharma for it enables one to rely on the meaning. So we need to understand that at a very base level, what the meaning is. Then the next one is desiring, or maybe another word might be aspiring. Aspiring the Dharma is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to connect to the light of the Dharma, to connect that this Dharma has these connection points, what it means to us in our lives, how we connect to that pathway, being taught by the Buddha and so on, and seeing where the congruencies are and so on. Then the next one is seeking to listen to the gateway of the Dharma, for it enables one to investigate the Dharma precisely in the correct manner. So in other words, tuning in to the teachings, tuning in to the logic that is being applied here, that is being taught here as a method to be able to apprehend what the Dharma is and so on. So seeking to listen to the teachings of the Dharma. And then the last one again was the correct application is a gateway to the Dharma, for it leads to the right conduct. So now taking the first three and being able to bring them into our lives, now we embody that, and now we begin to behave with that ability to be able to overcome the wrong views, to apply that in our everyday life, to overcome the wrong views. So, I'd like to open it up for discussion now. Does anybody have a comment about anything that I mentioned here, or maybe something else, another way of looking at this? Okay, Kunga, I'm going to ask you, please. Would you comment?
So would you say there are just these three wrong views, or is there another? Is the fourth wrong view just not accepting the need to practice at all, not accepting, not a belief that there's anything beyond, ordinary existence, not believing in a spiritual path?
Well, I'm sure you can amplify that and add things to it, but in the teachings that I've been exposed to, the three wrong views, the three elements there were the way that I chose to express this, because this is the way I learned it.
I was just thinking about the 44 correct application as being, following the Eightfold Path, or following the teachings.
Well, isn't that the second of the wrong views of not accepting the Eightfold Path that would lead to the cessation of the cause of suffering?
It reminds me, this idea of these four: the pursuit, the desiring, the seeking, and the practicing. There's a model in addiction treatment where they call it the stages. What do they call it? Stages of change. Anyways, you can't, when someone has a substance abuse issue, it's very hard to provide treatment if they don't recognize there's a problem. Like, they really have to be at a certain a point where they're like, the first stage is, there is no problem to the person, so they just enjoying their abuse. And then the second stage is an awareness of the problem, but not actually seeking out to pursue any kind of change. Then the third stage is actually, understanding you have a problem, seeking to change that problem, but not really having much effect, not having much luck. Maybe you're not putting forth enough effort, or you're maybe not changing enough in your life. And the fourth one is actually you're seeking the change, and the change is actually happening. It's a circular path though with addiction, and people often have a relapse. But with that relapse, you would know maybe quicker to come back to the fourth one again there. But it kind of made me think about that too. Like with our spiritual path, there are a lot of people out there who would say, they're just ignorant that there's any other way to experience life. And then people start to maybe see there's things not working out in their life. They want something changed. They don't know what it is. then they start to investigate, and then they decide on a path and start to follow that path and maybe start to see some results. So I think that's another way for me to kind of understand that. Thank you.
That's good. And that applies. That's very good. Alex, I see you got your hand up. Did you want to say something?
All right, sorry, took me a while to get to microphone. That's actually, thank you. I didn't realize that somehow this may be connected with the right and wrong views, but also I was thinking like I was reading the previous verse about stupidity. Yeah, I think that's like the first thing, like when you kind of awake yourself and start thinking, okay, what is going on around me? You know, initially we, like as a children, we kind of like innocent and in a way stupid, like we just taking everything at face value and just going with the life. But at some point we realize something is not right here. Like, why am I make this? Why am I get into trouble again and again? Why people want to get me or something like that? Like why things are happening the way they are happening and why I'm not happy about it. So and then that's going from stupidity to now trying to I see that these 4 sentences or 5, it's like a path, like how do we get to like serious study and you know, training in Dharma. So then we start to looking for it, pursuing, but we may not know where it is, you know, who is teaching that. Then, but we really, like at some point in my life also, like I was really yearning to find a lot of, I had a lot of questions, you know, a lot of things that nobody could answer, you know. So and then make an effort to actually sit there and listen to the teacher, what they have to say, what wisdom do they have to share. And not just that, you have to also apply all that wisdom. You have to, you know, put in your own life. And like to me, it was at some point I realized, well, karma really exists. You know, I was just seeing these things that happening, just like at some point it was a matter of day or less that something I did to others, and then it happened to me. Very strange, very striking way. You know, how did that happen? So, but you know, I start seeing these parallels. This so yeah. I
Okay.
think that outlines the path. That outlines the path.
Okay. So you're seeing a linkage. You're seeing a progression here, and that's good. And you know, I just want to make the point again that the in the 10 non-virtues, we talk about that. You know, the wrong view of the mind is like ignorance or delusion. You know, we don't know what we don't know, and I'm not even going to try and find out what it is. And even though maybe someone's presenting it to me, I'm going to say, oh, no, that doesn't exist. That can't be true, and just shut it off. Instead of what would be the virtue of that wrong view would be to investigate the meaning, engaging in the meaning, finding a teacher, finding a system that does illuminate what might be that question, that darkness, that ignorance, to be able to find maybe there is another way. So does somebody else have a comment?
Lance, I need to know what book we're working from.
Well, we're working from the the golden color book, The Play in Full, book number 1 of 4, where it says chapters 1 through 10. So at the bottom it says 1 through 10. So you have 3 of those golden books, and this one is chapters 1 through 10. So while Mark is looking for that, does anybody else have another comment or question? Okay. I would just like to ask about karma. You know, what do you think about karma? What is the validity of karma? And I'm going to ask Roshani if you wouldn't mind commenting on it, Roshani, because you know your multi-cultural background, you know, can bring several different points of view on karma.
Sure. Namaste. Thank you, Lance, for asking that.
You're welcome.
Karma is, for the word, literally means action. We all know that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So action, karma is action. But then in our religion, in a Hindu philosophy, when we said karma, it means what is coming to us, like our destiny. It's like what is coming to us from the result of our action past, from the past bringing our karma at this moment. That's how we say it. But after I learned in spirituality, karma is when things happen to us at this moment, how I react or how I respond. That is my karma now. So it has a little bit of different meaning in our Hindu religion. It is when we said karma means it's just a result, just the result of my past action coming now. But now going deeper into the spirituality, because that karma, what happens to us, is not only my action doing that. It has connected with so many different, in a collective way, and many different energies it brought about now. It's not only my individual things that I have done. And that's why we cannot just say it's my karma and it happened to me. It does. Yes, of course, we know what we do yesterday. It comes to us. But then that is one side of karma. But then the most important is how I either, like we were just talking about before, all different mind conditioning we are talking about. First now, how we bring awareness for the mind judgments, things like that. We just talked about that before this. So we all have our own personality or conditioning. We act according to that. I may look at differently and you'll see differently because of my our conditioning, how I grew up and all that. Even judgments will be different. So that will be karma also, because we are like judging from our mind conditioning, the conditioning mind. The thoughts will come, but there is awareness. We say awareness.
There's what? There's what? What is that word?
Awareness, aware, or being aware.
Awareness,
like
awareness.
Yeah. So when we have that awareness of what you are saying and doing, then we have a different kind of a responding will come instead of reacting to it. If we react, then that means that is karma, because it's going to bring the result out of that. But if we respond, that karma is in highest action. It was in the highest action. There is no karma behind it. So it's in the one Buddha nature. When we are in one with the Buddha, you in your language will be Buddha yourself, Buddha nature. That is the responding from that place, from that consciousness, from the Buddha nature consciousness, we are responding, then that will not lead to karma, because that is the highest action of not having good or bad. There is no good and bad. It's just the only good.
Okay, so there are causes and there are conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we have a cause that says I really dislike this person or something like that, and I just hold that cause in myself, I don't like this person, I have this hatred, but there's no condition for me to do anything about it, maybe that karma doesn't actually occur. But if there's the condition that that person is nearby and I have some kind of a weapon, or maybe it's just my voice and I'm able to challenge them in some way, the conditions are right that I have that weapon, then I can I can unload on that person. I can do something to harm that person, and then a karma is the result of that because the karma is the action for that, and then there's a result that comes out of that. So karma causing conditions and the results, is what we need to think about. Debbie, would you have a comment about that?
That is
Lance, I had a question really quick, that's very pertinent. Can someone talk about karma that is neutral? Is that what you all are describing?
Well, that would be one facet of the karma, yes. But let me ask Debbie, maybe she can include that in her, if she can respond to this.
Roshani, I cannot add to your explanation. That is a great, that's like one of the best explanations that I've heard. And it's a really good way to talk about the complexity of it. Yeah, I think it's really common for people to think, okay, I was born in the family I was born into, and if something happens, I'm like, if my family does something, it's like, oh, this happened. I'm like, no, actually, I was born into this family because I ended up in this family, choice or not. Everybody has their own ability to act. A friend of mine just got into a car accident. She was rear-ended by somebody. And, people might say, oh, I deserve it, or does she deserve it, or what's my karma? Well, you also had some idiot behind you that wasn't paying attention. And in every second of every day, that person was making choices that could have put them anywhere. And if that irresponsible guy, hadn't hit her, it's not like she had a destiny with a car plowing into her. So the next person, behind her is going to do it. It's really complicated. And it is interwoven. And, we are living now in, ecological disaster. And if you were born as like a mouse in some field that contaminated with oil, you don't deserve to die early because you get some horrible, cancer or disease or whatever. There's corals dying all over the world because the water's so hot. They didn't ask for that, right? They didn't do anything bad, right? They've been there for 20 years. What is in their karma that, billions of people are going to destabilize the planet, and then I'm going to boil to death and it's my fault? It's complicated. That's all I'd add.
Okay, very good, thank you. We still have the question of neutral karma. So there's a positive karma, there's a positive action, there's a negative action that we can take, or there's a neutral action that we can take that we don't act at all. So would somebody like to comment on that? Congo?
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. So it's almost like the first example that you gave about the person who gets angry about someone, because that, as long as they don't encounter that person, that's neutral. But I would say that's not really neutral, that's negative already. So if the person hadn't developed that anger, if they were able to experience the situation without creating that anger within the self, that would be a neutral karma. I think. I think if you get angry, even if you can't express it, it's going to affect yourself. You hold it in, those anger seeds grow and it creates some type of effect for you later that's going to be difficult to deal with. I think Thich Nhat Hanh talks about we have these different types of seeds in us, and we can water these seeds with our thoughts. That's how we water them. We water them with our thoughts. So if you're watering these anger seeds all the time, even if you're not acting them out, it's creating a lot of negative karma for yourself, because it affects your ability to think about other things. So that's how I would say. The neutral karma maybe is the karma that you're able to experience the world, without ignorance, so that you're not creating these negative seeds within yourself, watering these negative seeds within yourself. Thank you.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be non-reaction? That would keep you neutral, wouldn't it?
Well, I guess the question would be, why are you not reacting? Is it out of wisdom that you're not reacting? Is it out of compassion that you're not reacting? Is it out of ignorance that you're not reacting? You don't know what to do?
Couldn't it be any of those things? I mean, the fact is you're not producing any negative action and you're not producing any positive. That would mean you're neutral, wouldn't it?
Well, remember the karma is an action. So a neutral action, does that have a result to it? A neutral
yeah.
action.
Right, I didn't think of that.
So let me ask our resident scholar, Bernie, what would you have to say about this?
Okay. Traditionally, karma is considered one of the most difficult concepts to understand in Buddhism, much more difficult than emptiness, and all of us have trouble with emptiness. Now, generally, mental events, mental processes are divided into three kinds: wholesome, unwholesome, negative or positive, and neutral. Generally, we know what positive and negative are. Neutral are things like simply paying attention to a particular thing. And now Jigten Sumgong taught in his famous text, this is old age because I can't remember its name right now, Gong Chig. So there is no neutral karma. Every karma is either positive or negative. And I can't remember the commentary on that, but I do remember that point. And that even if we think something is neutral, in reality, it's connected with other positive or negative events. So it's sort of woven in to our other actions. So simply by ignoring a situation, it could be considered negative karma or positive karma, depending on what we're ignoring and our motivation for ignoring it. Just generally, we would say not paying attention to something is not a negative event, but it could be negative or it could be positive. If we're ignoring the suffering of another person, that would be negative. If we're ignoring, like, say, the taunts or something of other people, that would be more or less positive. So so in reality, all of our actions, no matter how minute, are involved with positive or negative karma. Even our dreams are dependent on our habitual actions of the day. So normally what we would think that if we do some negative action in our dreams, it's not considered bad karma, but because that springs from a habitual mindset, and it's the expression of a habitual mindset that could be considered very slightly negative. So there's that. Now, karma the other big problem people always
Well,
have.
can I ask a question about that
Sure.
before you move to another
Sure.
point about that?
Go ahead.
Does that mean that karma is innately dualistic?
Well, innately, we say everything is empty, including karma. So karma is really does not have any innate existence. Conventionally, you could say that it's dualistic, positive or negative.
All
So,
right, so then conventionally we would say that it's dualistic.
yeah,
But it's maybe it's so to say that something is neutral karma is a misnomer.
I
And
think
and
in modern terms,
it's a neutral result.
in modern terms, I think it's maybe best to think of it as a spectrum from extremely negative to extremely positive. And that sort of 0 point is so tiny that it's vanishing. So it's just like a continuum from very negative to very positive. So that's not like you can really put it in 3 separate bins. You just have to view it as a continuum. At least that's the way I think of it. So, not saying that's right because that's my personal opinion and not something I've heard from the teachers, but you go from very negative to less negative to extremely slightly negative to extremely slightly positive to more positive to extremely positive. So that's my opinion, at least.
Well, if there's a situation, Rashawn, I'll get right back to you. If there's a situation that is a hateful situation, it's a powerful situation, full of hate and so on, and we respond to that with equal hatred, then that karma, that action is going to be that equal hatred to that cause that is coming about, and that it's going to have the inevitable outcome, the result of a terrible karma. A result is going to be there. But if we were able to treat that negativity, that terrible situation, with loving kindness, instead of
Right.
equal anger, that we diffuse it with loving kindness, does that neutralize that negativity? And does that create a neutral outcome?
Okay, when we meet that's why, yeah, I think so. I think that's why they teach practices like mind training, so that when we meet the negative situations in life, we are taught to respond to them in a positive manner, to view the negativities that we experience in life as opportunities to practice the Dharma. And in that way, the negative karma that's associated with those negative results to us become seeds of virtue. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's the way I look at it. So.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Thank you. Roshani wanted to add something.
The karma as an action, like we have a physical action. One is we do something action. Another action we have is the mind action, thinking way. The another one is spiritual action. So coming from the loving compassion you just talked about, that is another action. So there's 3 ways that we create our karma action. Positive, negative, this is also, it's a mind action. This is emotion, I think. It's like an emotion one. But the neutral one is like it's like just like going to work, eating. Those are like, we're doing the action, but that is not positive or negative. It's just a neutral. Doesn't have that kind of qualities in it. It's like no positive, negative, but it's the neutral. It's like you are doing action, but there is no emotion involved in there. You're doing it just for that. That's it. Like that's a neutral action, I would think. But then the neutral action, negative action, even positive action, those all of those, any other actions that can be lifted up higher way would be the loving kindness. That is the spiritual action. That is only higher good. There is no opposite in it. It's a higher good. What even it seems like a non-reaction coming, but that non-reaction is coming. If it is coming from that compassion, it's best not to say anything right now at this moment. That is the right action. That moment is not, that is a responding way. And that action is higher good only. There is no positive, negative, neutral, nothing like that. That's how I would say. I don't know if you understand that.
Yeah, that's very good. So that's a practical way of saying neutral, that,
Yeah.
it's not charged either positive or negative. It's just rather mundane, everyday kind of activity that we're engaged in.
If I could comment on that, something
Sure.
I heard is that if you're living your life with a spiritual purpose, and specifically if you take the Bodhisattva vow, but I don't think it's limited to that, even neutral activities like cooking a meal or taking a shower become positive actions because they become supports for your spiritual activity. And if you are devoted to negative actions, it's just the reverse. Those neutral act, if your life is more problem for the world than help, then even neutral activities become like negative activities. But I would rather focus on the opposite, that if you're living your life as a spiritual purpose, for a spiritual purpose, then everything that you do to support your life, which normally would be neutral, like going to work or washing your clothes or whatever, becomes also a spiritual practice and therefore positive.
So if we can use Buddha as an example, it's not limited to Buddha, but using Buddha as an example, because the image, the form that we associate with Buddha is one who is sitting in peaceful meditation, quiet, and so on like that, and non-reactive to anything until something appears to the Buddha to kind of interrupt his samadhi, the samadhi being that mind of meditation, that mind of peacefulness or something like that. And it's only then that Buddha, whether it's us or the Buddha or the Buddha, that then we would engage in some kind of thoughtfulness or activity or something, and whether or not that has positive results or negative results comes in question. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is this point of neutrality that is our state of mind, and if we can maintain that peaceful state of mind, then the activities that we engage in are going to be should be very practically neutral. Maybe we could extend it and say, okay, it's if I eat something and it supports some negative action or something because I'm eating that, but I wasn't intending to do that. Well, maybe the result of that is mitigated by my non-intention to engage in that. Kunga, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Bernie, for the continuum. Karma as a continuum. I really like that idea. And I wanted to add, and also like the idea that, our mundane activities would be affected by our spiritual path, as long as we bring mindfulness to them, right? So, eating is a maybe we might think that's a neutral, but in this day and age, we know that how we select what we're going to eat is not a neutral activity. It has karmic effects. Global warming is a result of how millions of people on Earth are selecting what to eat. So there's a lot of our mundane activities that do have positive and negative effects. We can try and use our mindfulness to limit those, but we're making a lot of sacrifices because we live in the 20th century and we drive cars and we utilize energy. I think the best thing we can do is like Bernie was saying, is use our spiritual path to guide our decisions. and so that we can try and minimize the negative effects of our ordinary everyday activities. But just because they're normal everyday activities doesn't, I don't think that makes them neutral of karmic effects, because otherwise, why would we have global warming? Thank you.
So does intention, is that part of the equation?
Sure, right. You have to have the intention. The intention.
Intention.
Yeah, but if you're just ignorant, that can't be an excuse for, oh, my karma is neutral because I'm ignorant. I don't think about the results of my actions. I don't intend to harm anybody. I'm just, that's just the way I live. People get harmed. So I'm not thinking, it's not my intention. So yeah, I think that's a difficult, maybe that's like a slippery slope.
Okay. Zara, I'd like to get how does all this land on you? And how does this answer the question of neutral karma in your mind?
Wow, like I like, what a great conversation. I've just been digesting every single person's contribution, and really going to contemplate this further, like over the rest of this week. So I don't have a really in-depth response other than each person, Roshani, Bernie, Kunga, each of you have contributed in a way that I had not actually uniquely thought of, because I am right now in a process of evolving spiritually right now, like in a practical way. Karma is very much on the forefront of my mind. It's for me a very real event. I don't question it at all, and so I'm very hyper vigilant to a point where it's almost disabling. And so it's actually really nice to hear each of your perspectives, and then really have something to consider. One of the things that really stood out, Lance, is when Kunga mentioned his comments about the thoughts could be negative karma, and I actually agree with that, because from a biological perspective, and Debbie had said this a couple weeks ago about the hormones, and then if I have negative thoughts, I'll end up binge eating sugar later to deal with it, because I'm so angry at someone, even though I didn't lash out, I just dealt with it. It built up, and at the end of the night, I'm eating Reese's Pieces because of all the sugar and the adrenaline, and I'm so fatigued of being in flight and fight because I wasn't able to deal with it in my head. Like, I was so angry at that person all day. So I've only harmed my body, my vessel. So Kunga actually added something I had never thought about before that actually was impactful for me to consider. And then Bernie, you always have really great insight. And Roshani, like I loved just such beautiful conversation and comments. So thank you all for this and the opportunity to hear each of you, your perspectives.
Very good, thank you. And let me point out one more thing, and that is to have, we have these books, we've got these reference materials, and this begs the question, should we be consulting these reference books? In particular, chapter 6 in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation deals with the method of karma and result. So you can go back and look at that and reflect on that, use that, and every few words, every few phrases and sentences is going to give you something else to put into the evaluation of the investigation of what karma is. And this is, of course, coming from the masters. So we should be inspired to go back and to look things up, and not just it's good to rely on each other. We're helpful to each other, but to consult the masters, to be able to consult the Buddhas and so on. So I encourage that.
Lance, that's actually a really good reminder. They actually hadn't thought of that as a way to, like, for private self-study for myself outside of these groups. That's actually a really great idea. Thank you.
Certainly. You're welcome.
Lance, may I also add something?
Sure.
My own studies of Eastern philosophy and brought me on this subject. I think in Chinese it's called Wu Wei, so which means Wu means no, and way is action, no action. So no or non-action. So it means not passiveness, but acting such that, again, not too much negative or too much positive karma is created. And to me, positive karma is, and I think in Buddhism, positive karma is viewed as not very desirable, because like in common mind, positive karma means something good, some kind of like good fortune, good money, or good food, and that can create attachment. So too much of good things is not really good for us, because it will create attachment to these good. On the other hand, too much bad things also not great, because it will make our life miserable, distract from getting to enlightenment. So somehow there should be a middle way. So something that creates minimum of this positive or negative karma, and maybe that's what we call no karma. And there is even a story that I think is popular at some point of time, where it is told by martial arts practitioners, because oftentimes there is a fight, and you may wonder, like, do you not do anything, or do you hurt the other person back when they're trying to hurt you? Well, there is always a third way, right? So, and the story says that the master was in a boat with another young master, and the young master discovered all this is some kind of famous martial arts master. So immediately he want to challenge him and prove that, hey, the old school is not good, right? So the old master knows that he can win, but he doesn't want to hurt the young person. So he said, okay, how about we'll fight here in this island? So when they arrive at the island, he let the young master jump out of the boat and like get ready for fighting. But instead, the old master just pushing the boat away from the shore. So the boat is floating away. So then there is no way for the young master to engage in any kind of fight. So I was trying to apply this kind of story to many situations in my life, and with some practice, I think we can find a third middle way where we do something that's not hurting other person, but at the same time not letting them hurt somebody, including ourselves. Okay, so it's
Thank you very much. That's very good. Good story.
Not easy, but I think it's possible.
Right. So let's move on and see if we can get another group of points here. And the next one is 4.19. And this, I've categorized these 4 statements as the 4 stages of everyday transcendence. So in other words, what that means to me is that it's not just the transcendence that we're able to attain very, very temporarily as we sit on the cushion, but what transcendence it is that we can take with us off of the cushion and be able to apply it in our everyday life. So these 4, this is 4.19. So the first one is the knowledge of names and forms is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to transcend all attachment. The second one is conquering views about causes is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it leads to the attainment of awareness and complete liberation. The next one is the elimination of attachment and aversion is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it eliminates judgmental thoughts. And the last one is expertise concerning the aggregates is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to thorough understanding of suffering. So really, this is kind of like an application of what we've been talking about, this past hour or so. So this is why I say it's the stages of everyday transcendence. How can we stabilize that? The knowledge, the conquering, the elimination, and the expertise that comes along as we are applying these notions into our everyday lives. Does anybody have any comments about this? Can you see that there maybe is a thread there, that there is a commonality of these four statements? And to me, this is the point of studying this. We could talk about this in 5 minutes, or we could talk about it in 55 minutes, or longer. And but it's the point of these are very provocative things to inspire us to engage in this kind of thought that we really just kind of, I think, take for granted. And our lives become, like the leaves in the wind, that we don't know what we're doing. We become delusional. We don't really understand what our life is, why it is that we have this life, and how, what karma are we creating for ourselves by not engaging in these things or engaging in these things. To see that there's a dynamic relationship, our life is a dualistic, compounded nature to it. That is our life as ordinary human beings. And it's through the transcendence of that we have this life, through the transcendence of that we're able to maintain our stability in the absolute nature, in the true nature of our Buddha nature, to be able to maintain that samadhi, to have that peace of mind that I think each one of us would like to have. We would all say, oh yeah, I'd like to have peace of mind. I'd like to be Buddha. But to do the work, going through all these different various ramifications of what it is to be a dualistic being, that's, well, maybe the monastics will do that. I don't have to do that as an ordinary human being, as a lay person.
Well, the thing that strikes me about this is the thing that struck me about the previous four, and that is that theory and practice contain, analytical meditation and reading the books and thinking about them and doing the practice both alone and as part of the Sangha. Like, these are building on each other. And each one of the, each of the statements is framed in a cause and result. And the causes and results are building on each other. But it always goes between, using logic, reasoning, the text, what people have said, and then using, practice techniques, very different forms of meditation, just participating in the Sangha. These all things they have to build on each other. And it's like laying out stages without laying out stages. Saying, you need to do X and Y and Z, but it's, a lot of this is how we learn. This is how human beings, our brains are designed to interact with our mind. And so it's the brain and the mind. It's, realizing emptiness and non-thought, and then discursive thought. And, you know, what's not said, which is it's implicit, that all of this is happening in the Sangha, right? You have teachers, you have your lineage, you have, the historical Buddha who relies on all the Buddhas have gone before. It's us here, we are the Dharmakaya. And so it's all being woven together in this. And, I like the way it does it without explicitly saying that's what it's doing.
Thank you. Yes.
Lance, I have kind of a question. Maybe you could clarify for me. So the second sentence saying something about conquering views about causes. Is it meant just to learning about different causes? That's what is meant to, like, learning about what the different causes may be? Or is it something about getting rid of, misconceptions about causes? I mean,
Yes, I understand.
it's just a little bit, maybe just a poetic language when they say conquering. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's, we have to look at it in terms of the causes, karma, and result. And the causes, there's myriad causes. We talk about the 84,000 emotions. And every one of those 84,000 emotions becomes a cause for a particular action, for a particular karma to come. And then our mental misconceptions become causes for karma to manifest and so on. And habitual tendency become causes for our karmic actions and so on. So this one statement opens up a gateway to many different things, to many conversations with ourselves, with our teachers, with our scriptures, and among ourselves in these kinds of meetings. So it really is a very open question that it's laying the responsibility for all this right at our feet. That if we want to understand how to, it says here, lead to the attainment of awareness and complete liberation, we need to understand causes. So conquering the views of causes means looking at all the different various viewpoints and so on, and being able to not conquer them in the way of saying suppressing them, but finding solutions to them, seeing the reality of them in our ordinary dualistic mind and wresting them through that investigation, through logic.
Yeah, because in the reason I'm asking this question, because there is also, of course, this concept of non-duality and transcending,
Yes,
good-
but can you get there?
that thing,
Yes, that's true. But can you get there and maintain that right now? If I said go to non-duality right now, how long would you be able to stabilize that?
Yeah, that comes and goes sometimes. I don't even
Yeah,
notice.
I mean 5 seconds. So that's part of the human condition. And what we're learning is the method to be able to transcend that, to be able to get to that non-duality, and to be able to stabilize it to the point that we can get up off the cushion and walk about and do things still in that non-duality.
Lance, that's why for me, the sections that are coming about the senses 420, 421
Yes.
are very, I know they're sequenced in order, but in the Western culture, because we're so overscheduled and constantly in action, like it requires a great level of discipline within what you can control. Like, let's start in your home, like the music you listen to, even if you're not going to be monastic, but are you listening to pop culture music? It gets down to, if you don't have that level of discipline, you're not going to hit 4.19. Like, the sense organs are going to keep you from in Western society, are going to keep you hooked nonstop. It requires a lot of willpower, and you have to start with your sense organs, and you have to start within your home environment and the people around you. Now that I understand it, Lance, like, if you were like, how could you write a behavior plan to teach someone how to do this? I would start with the sense organs, like sounds, cleaning up the, like, I would be able to do this now because I'm doing it for myself. I'm using myself as an experiment right now. And I've removed all music with words. I'm only listening to mantra in the car, and it's incredible what you hear once you start tuning out all the cluttery language. You start hearing the vibration of the earth in your ears. It's woo.
Right. You're absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And let's stay with the book and
Yeah.
because you've opened up, the next segment. And so that 4.20, then these are the three samadhis. And the samadhis are the meditation mind, is the peaceful meditation mind. And there's many different elements or phases or stages of that peaceful mind. When we talk about the king of samadhis, it means all of them all together, that all of these have come together. But here we're breaking it down to just three. And so the first one that you just mentioned, it says, equality of the elements is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the relinquishment of the source of suffering. So the source of suffering is listening to the cacophony of all the contemporary news and contemporary music and the lyrics that are going on and all these different conflicts that are happening in the world and so on, But if we can find the equality of the elements, which is the equality of water, earth, fire, wind, and space, you can't break it down any further than that. And when you start looking at your life in terms of, well, what water is in my body? What fire is in my body? You start looking at these elements as being the basic building blocks of what we know to be phenomenal nature. So equality of these elements, to say, is fire more important than water? Is space more important than fire? And start analyzing this and start breaking this down and thinking about this becomes what you were just saying, becomes a peacefulness because you're relinquishing the source of suffering. You're cutting through all that noise.
Lance, are you familiar with Ayurveda?
Sure.
Oh, okay, because this
I
is
mean,
like,
not as a concept, that's all. I've
oh,
never
okay.
studied
So I
it.
have a little bit of a deep dive into it. This is very much, and I know, like, like, because that's from the Indian culture, that's where it's originated. This is very much, that's why I was curious about what it was referring to, if it was referring to the elements in nature, the 5 fundamental elements. Like, blood is water in our bodies, right?
Right,
And the breath is the air and space, and
right.
um and just kind of trying to figure out that's what I was curious about with that one when I was reading it and trying to understand, because his in these teachings he would have been influenced by Ayurveda, correct? Because
Sure,
of
absolutely.
okay, because that does make sense to me. The balance, there's a symbiosis, and when you overdo anything, you lead to imbalance and suffering and pain.
Yeah. So the
With
next statement, in this 4.20 says withdrawal of the senses. So we're talking about the senses. We're talking about, the human senses is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to meditate on the path. So it's taking those 5 elements and now it's making them relative, or, to the senses. And then it says, the last one says, acceptance of non-arising. The acceptance of non-arising is a gateway to the light, for it leads to the actualization of cessation. So this non-arising is another concept that opens up, a doorway to many things. And this non-arising is another way of saying emptiness. That, and the continuum, if you want to, look at it from that point of view too. So acceptance of the non-arising. So it's all coming to rest of all these psychophysical things that human beings are involved with because of the nature of being a human being, and all leading to the transcendence of this through mind training.
Lance, this is anyone who has anyone who wants to jump in. I think more of a practical question and application is: do you think there's a developmental sequence in the Western culture, like where we have to work to make money and pay bills, we have to be around these loud and aggravating environments because we have to pay bills?
Okay.
Would you recommend that, like, you have to deal with issues of the body before you can really get into deep level consciousness and mindfulness training? You have to have like a basis of, I can withhold from not listening to music for 30 days. Like,
I think the answer is there isn't, and that's why it's said so many times that the West, if not the rest of the world, is spiritually bankrupt. That term, because they're not using spirituality as a buffer, as a fulcrum, to understand the physicality of life and the intellectualization of that physicality. There's not a physical component that they're using. And we're talking about that. It's got a whole new vocabulary to it. But you're not going to find this in Harvard. You're not going to find this in Yale. You're not going to find it in your local high school or elementary school. This is the kind of stuff that in the East, has been taught for thousands and thousands of years, because the spirituality was a common thread that went through everything that they did. But that's being washed away because of the seduction that the East is falling into patterns of the West.
It's really interesting to me, and I don't want to monopolize. I want to be a good listener. I find these particular parts of the sutra here are profound to me, like in trying to figure out how to apply them practically in our day-to-day lives in Western culture. Because I think this right here hits on key elements that allow you to have the self-discipline and entering, like as soon as you leave your house, where you could have a lot more control of these elements, like the car banking, someone beeping at you, cussing you out.
So what system do you think is there for you?
Lance,
is there a system? Is there a system to be able to do this?
I am basically doing what I call, so I always use talking analogies. You go to the gym to do your muscles and lift weights. So right now I'm putting myself in spiritual athletic training. That's my analogy, is basically I've got myself off of TV, off music. I'm in a training mode right now. Now that's me. This is my process, and it may be over. But
so is what we're doing, is that part of that training?
Yeah.
Of that structure?
Yeah, like this is
that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, this is like a training group. I'm in group training right now, and so it's like this is part of all of this is part of it. These groups are part of it. I have to be part of these groups to keep these touch points. But I'm fascinated by this section, and I love if anyone else wants to talk about this from a practical perspective, because I think this for me is the number one challenge, the 420, 421, 422, because I have to work, and like being out in that dark in that Buddha field every day. I keep looking at people, Lance, and I'm like they're I keep looking at everyone. I'm like they're it's there. Everyone's got it.
All right. Let me ask Roshani again, because she has, among this group right now, she has a very keen ability to be able to recognize, this East-West thing going on because she was born in the Eastern culture and grew up in the Eastern culture, and coming to America and the West and seeing, the dynamic of what's happening. And I saw her shaking her head as we were talking about this. And I wonder, Rashani, would you comment on this from your point of view, how it affects you and your family? How do you see it in your family? Your microphone's muted.
Yes, being born in Nepal, I'm from Nepal, and then not knowing spirituality, but then we were growing as our childhood, when we were growing up, it was mixed in our religion. We didn't know that. But the religion and the spirituality is in the religion. It is intertwined together. Spirituality is our spirit quality. That's our being level. When we were growing up, we already had that, I guess. And then I came when I was 20 or 21 to this country. Then reading the spirituality books, it opened up easily. It didn't take me long. What are they talking about? What you are talking about right now? Also, how, like Jera was asking, how we have to be in this outside world, aggravating or whatever, that we have judgment about them. They are also acting upon their own conditioning at that time. If we can't do anything, but we can do what we can inside us, learning all this Buddhism, that Buddha nature in us, bring compassion to them. It not only saves you, but you are supporting that aggravating nature they have right now at this moment because of many reasons. So only concern is what we are thinking and judging. And as we talked about this number 420 now, bringing that awareness, having that awareness, non-judging, understanding there, that will us liberate from that web of this karma, because you are already not entangling with that. Whatever the situation is, whatever the people are doing, that's outside of you. Even they are directing towards us, still you have a choice. We have a choice whether how I'm going to react to that or how I'm going to respond to it. So as long as I can be in my being level, in my Buddha nature, nobody can disturb my peace of mind. That's for sure. And this is the practice we're doing. So we don't give power. Only thing we can do is for us, ourselves. So that's what we learned when in Nepal, like spirituality in the religion was like non-judgmental. Non-attachment came later. I didn't know non-attachment. Non-attachment and non-reacting and non-judgment. Those three things are our key core value that we practice that. When we do that, it's easier to adapt in any kind of situation, and we help at the same time.
Are you finding fellowship in other Nepali people that you know who have emigrated here and are looking for spirituality that came, from their culture?
Yeah.
Or are you finding that more people are just being seduced by the the Western way of life?
Well, both. I can see that also, and then others also the same. I see both, I'll say. But it's still, when I encounter with my friends, I still I feel like the religion-wise, like you were talking about the temple, we talked about, it's kind of difficult to separate spirituality in a religion, but I would like to see that not only the method or techniques, things like that, only like the ritual part of it, but also at the same time, I would like to integrate the spirituality in it. But that I haven't really seen much when I do that. Like even our family, mostly in a ritual, the tradition, that religion kind, not like spirituality. There is a different different, it has a different dimension. The spirituality is a different dimension, which is only the being part, not only the way to do it. It's not, we are focusing outer side, outer one than the inner one. And what I learned from spirituality is from the inner. It's only the inner, that's the foremost important thing. Then you can bring that out to whatever the ritual you are doing, whatever religion you are, whatever way you want to, bring it out.
So there's a huge social connection with all of this, that, going to the temples and so on like that, many people are there for the social aspect more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes, so
but there
that's
are,
why. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
That's why I find it a little hard because without meaning, when we do things without meaning, but when you know the meaning doing the same thing, it deepens you, and then you can do that with more joyfully and more meaningfully. But before, I would do it without knowing what is the meaning of it. Knowing spirituality made me more go deeper to the things that what I always did, but it just has deepened the meaning and makes sense much more way.
I'd like to ask a question because I really don't know the answer to this. But from my observation, it seems that the Muslim people who are practicing Islam seem much more devoted to the to the prayers and to the involvement in the spirituality and its meaning much more than many of these other groups that we could talk about. Zara, would you comment on that? What do you think?
Um,
It doesn't seem to be as social. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I'll say two things, pivoting off Roshani, because I was born into Islam, and so there's a thing where, I think you're born into the religion, wherever your birth, whatever religion is predominant, and then so it's just culturally you just inherit whatever you're told to do without actually being taught about. Each of us has a soul, right? Within the religion, first you're spiritual and then religion, which is, Lance, why you said in the beginning, at the very first, it all is the same. It's the Jewish pathway, the Brahma, the God, the Allah, everyone's right. Everyone's right, because we're first spiritual and then religion is context specific, but every pathway is correct. Everyone is, like you said, the triad is there. So to answer your question more pointedly, I think some of it, I'm going to be very honest with you, is like with any other thing, some of it is there's a level of superficiality. I'm doing it because I'm just doing it just because without knowing why I'm doing it, right? Sometimes I'm born into something without having to think about, why am I doing this behavior? I just am modeling it. But if another adult actually didn't teach me about my soul and spirit. So I think in Islam, some of it is I'm doing it because there's a social pressure, or because there's a little bit of judgment, to be perfectly honest, at least in my anecdote, is if I don't cover my hair, you're a bad Muslim, right? If I don't go and do this prayer, or if my nails are painted, if I've got nail polish on, if I'm a female. So there's you're trying to avoid being judged. So the ego was very present there, being shamed or blamed. Going back to the 8 worldly concerns. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know. I don't know. My personal experience may be highly biased, obviously, because I'm not a practicing Muslim. I departed at age 32 by intentionality, because it felt very fake to me. That's me. That's only me speaking for myself, Lance. I'm not judging the religion or anyone who may follow it. My family just completed Ramadan last week, actually. 80% of my family just did. So,
okay.
So.
Well, thank you. So just going back to the book, we only got a few minutes left, and just to be able to kind of draw a few things together before we go on to something else, which will be next week, but just to be able to say that 4.20 is, these 3 samadhis, these 3 states of peaceful mind. And one is equality, one is withdrawal, and one is acceptance of non-arising. And to ponder those, to contemplate those, and to read these sentences here in a stable, quiet environment for, an hour, a half an hour, whatever you have, and think about these things, and maybe have some books that you can cross-reference. Maybe you can Google some of these things, just these, and in our glossary, you can look up some of these phrases and words in our glossary. So I'm just trying to encourage, your active investigation of these things. We talk about in our prayers when we do our our closing prayers, our dedication prayers. We say that that we listen to the teachings, we study the teachings, we practice the teachings, and we contemplate the teachings, and we meditate. So there's an order to it, and what we find is that the meditation, that true meditation, comes by itself, through the exhaustion of all these other things that we do to get ourselves prepared to be able to do that, have that crossing over, to have that moment of epiphany, of being able to experience something that is that true nature in our heart. We all have it. We've all experienced that one time or another for myriads of reasons. But to be able to do it in this kind of a controlled atmosphere with these kinds of teachings and so on is really what we're trying to make available to you, to recognize that those are the stepping stones to help us to get to liberation from suffering. Will we all admit, will we all say, yes, I have suffering in my life, and yes, the suffering I've caused myself have been reactions that I have made because of causes and conditions and so on. And I keep doing that, and I really don't want to anymore. And if I can help myself to do that, and maybe through that I can radiate whatever purity I can do as light for other beings to be able to do it. And then you find that your circle of friends, your circle of brothers and sisters, your Sangha now becomes your family, your Dharma family. And you're not listening to the cacophony of the radio and the music and stuff like that. You enjoy just being together and talking about these things or doing these practices together and so on like that. And that's lifestyle change.
Lance, could you get a technical question here? I
Okay.
see like on the withdrawal of the senses, there is F21. Is it like a footnote
Yes.
of some kind?
There's
you
a
have those
reference to the
footnotes?
original, I think it's a reference to the original text that we don't have in here. I think that's been explained to me. Bernie explained that to me because I always wondered about that. That F21 is a reference to the original Sanskrit, I would imagine.
Like I'm pretty sure that it means it's a page number in the original text, so people can coordinate what they read here with the text. Actually, it's a Tibetan text. They said that they used a version of the text in Tibetan.
So, so for this one statement, it's just saying withdrawal of the senses is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to meditate on the path. So if you're doing a proper meditation, you're sitting on a cushion or a chair, but you've kind of, set your Buddha field. You've gone through all the, the practice, preparation and so on. And you've kind of, just turned off your senses. Your eyes may be closed. You're not smelling anything in particular. You're not tasting anything in particular. You're not touching anything. You're in a neutral space, in that state of withdrawal that opens up you to that true meditation.
Lance, I do have a so okay, to follow up
Wait
that,
a minute, wait a minute. Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yeah, no, it was just about where to find that footnote, but
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
Yes,
But thanks for
Zara?
clarification. It's
yeah, I was
about
gonna,
samadhi.
no,
So
sorry.
withdrawal of the senses is samadhi, right?
It could be explained that way, yes. So as an aspect of samadhi, certainly.
Go ahead, Zara.
Oh, sorry. It's just actually, so from a practical perspective, Lance, is that why some people will go through certain processes of like, so that, for example, like the yoga poses or the prostrations, like you're exhausting and then bringing yourself inward and then sitting, like you've gone through like a sequence to sort of help this part get ready to go really at a deeper level. Is that why, is there a recommended sequence of, and I'm looking at it even from the yogic perspective where they do all these certain yoga poses and then the prana, the breathing, and then you sit and then try to meditate for like,
Yeah, when I learned yoga, it was 50 years ago. And at that time, they were still teaching. I attended hatha yoga. And if you went through a series of poses, let's say it was 12 poses, and you would build up, to them, and then you would hold each pose completely motionless for maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And then during that time was supposed to be a meditation, that your body was in rest in that pose, whether it's the downward doggy pose or whatever pose it is and everything. And it was a way of stabilizing the physical body so that you could have this spiritual meditative experience in that particular pose. I'm told they don't teach that too much anymore in these
it's
yoga classes. It's all just physical yoga.
it's athletic. It's not real yoga. It's all
It's
like
athletic yoga.
it's calorie. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
workout.
But in the Tibetan, and at least in the Tibetan, they kind of sidestep all that physicality and just say, well, we're going to start from sitting on the cushion. And we're starting, from the meditation point of view. We're going to go to the meditation as quickly as we can. And you can do the yoga later on if you want, or you can do the physical later on if you want.
I would like to add on this.
Yes.
Okay. As you said, stabilizing the physicality, that adjusting and kind of resting the body at that time, and it's for the mind to concentrate. So rather wandering with the thoughts, it will concentrate when you do those pose or the mudra or all these different asana, the breathing. This is for the concentration for the mind, and both are really helpful for the meditation to be calm and also motionless in your body. Just sit there with that. So that is helpful. That's the reason, but not necessarily you need that in order to meditate. Yoga means means connection to your being. And not the yoga how we have learned here, the posture kind of a yoga for body training kind yoga, but yoga is for the connection with your being, and that helps when your body is very settled and then mind is concentrated, it focus one pointed, and it is very helpful. That's the reason. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you all very much for this very good discussion. I think everybody had good things to contribute to it, and for those of us who didn't say anything, I hope that it landed on you well. And if you have questions or comments and you'd like to make them, one-on-one, you can get in touch with me very easily, or whatever it takes. So we don't want to put pressure on anybody, but it was a very good discussion, and I think we're moving in a definite forward direction. So thank you. So let's turn to our daily prayers book, to the daily practice prayers and guides, and the dedication of prayer of Lord Jigten Sumgul on page 36 and 37. So if everybody will recite that out loud, keep your microphones off. And so please join me reciting this. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. The body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Lance.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Lance, and everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jerry, bye-bye.